Hello everybody. Today I have another true story that actually happened to me. One evening years ago, I was having what many would call a flow state. Now a flow state is a condition of complete absorption into whatever you're doing. When you're in the flow, you become fully immersed in the present moment. Time often feels distorted. You may seem to speed up or slow down. Self-consciousness just fades away. Actions feel effortless and natural. You aren't overthinking, you're simply doing. Your focus is intense, but not forced. Now, athletes often call it being in the zone. Musicians, artists, writers, and meditators experience it as well. And I was having one of these moments just a few years ago when I began making videos for the very first time. I knew what was happening because I had experienced it before. As a concert musician, I played flute in the United States Navy Band, as well as local orchestras and quintets. Most musicians hate practicing, but I loved it. There were days I practiced 10, 12, even 16 hours, not because I had to, but because I just loved playing. Bach, Mozart, Tchaikovsky were among my favorites. As a flutist, I experienced flow state on a few occasions. One concert in particular stands out far ahead of the others. On this day, the auditorium was packed. We had a full house. But this night felt different, more intense. The conductor walked onto the stage to the sound of applause. He turned towards the audience to acknowledge them and glanced at me the way he always did to make sure I was ready. Then he turned around, raised his baton, and we began. The first notes filled the hall, and somewhere during that performance, I completely lost track of time. I remember being so deeply into the music that everything just faded away. I even closed my eyes at times because I knew the music very well, and I remember seeing colors while I was playing. Burgundy and pink were the main colors I saw. And then I remember seeing the audience clapping, but strangely, I did not hear them. Everything felt distant, almost dreamlike. The flow state felt as if time had stopped, as if I was no longer thinking about the music, but I had become the music. There was no audience. There was no stage, no pressure, no self-consciousness, only the experience itself. And for a few brief moments, it felt like I was connected to something much larger than myself. Before I knew it, the concert was over. I was so sad because I felt literally like I was in heaven the entire time, the entire performance. And now I was back in reality. A 90-minute performance felt just like 5 minutes. I opened my eyes and the entire audience was on its feet, clapping. As I was walking through the streets after the concert, I was a little sad at first, but eventually a sense of peace overcame me because I gave the performance that I wanted to give. No mistakes, just a pure performance coming from my heart. I truly felt it came from my heart. That was one of the deepest flow states I had ever experienced, or so I thought. Years later, I would experience something even more powerful. One day, I sat down around 7 in the morning, only to work on my second or third video. Hours just disappeared. 3 o'clock came, then 4 o'clock, then 6 o'clock, then 9 o'clock. I skipped lunch. I barely even stopped for dinner. I even held off going to the bathroom because I didn't want to interrupt what I was doing. I was completely absorbed. Around midnight, I remember this very clearly. I stood up and looked around the room. Something felt different. The sides of my head was twitching. Now that's a sensation I do often get when I drink really good glass of wine. But this time I didn't have any wine. I then noticed something else. Everything around me seemed sharper, brighter, almost as if there was a faint glow on everything. That's when I realized it. I was in flow state, a deep one, much deeper than the last one. When I closed my eyes, I saw the same colors I had seen 2 decades earlier while performing music, pink and burgundy. I went back to work. The next thing I knew, time was just flying by, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning. I crawled into bed, barely making it into bed, to be honest. I instantly fell asleep. And what happened next is something I have never forgotten. I don't remember even dreaming, but what I do remember is waking up, just barely opening my eyes slowly, still in that thin veil state where some spiritual folks believe the veil between physical and non-physical reality is its thinnest. When I opened my eyes, I saw computer code. My walls were covered in computer code just like you see in the Matrix. Zeros and ones running up and down my walls. The strange thing is everything still looked like itself. My chair was still a chair. My walls were still walls, but everything still had code on it. It was made of code. It was just strange. Now, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just telling you exactly as I remember it. And to this day, I can see it plain as day, very clearly. I remember saying to myself, don't blink, because I knew as soon as I blinked, everything would be gone. Now, I cannot tell you exactly what happened that morning. Maybe it was a neurological event. Maybe it was the result of 16 hours of intense focus and creativity. Or maybe it wasn't. The truth is, I don't know. What I do know is that moment, that experience changed me forever. It made me question everything. It made me question reality. It made me wonder whether there was more to this world than what we normally perceive. And those questions eventually led me down a path that became my spiritual awakening. So when people ask me when my awakening began, I don't tell them it started with a book, or a teacher, or a meditation practice. I usually tell them it started with me becoming vegan, and that would be partly true. But my true spiritual journey began that morning. I've told a few friends over the years, but this is the first time I spoke about it publicly. Whether that code came from my mind, my soul, or something beyond either one, I may never know. But I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had an experience that was so vivid, so real, that it changed the direction of your life? Leave a comment, and please let me know. My name is Peter Ferguson, and I'll see you in the next awakening.